Hello there, human beings. This is going to be a tutorial. I'm going to start doing tutorials on my channel. This is going to be the first one that I actually put up live. It's going to be Linux tutorials mostly, and how to use certain software and do different things and set up games and whatnot. Everyday user stuff. For this first one, though, it's going to be my friend's Mac because they wanted to be able to play games on it and that aren't Mac games, and that is doable. There's different ways to do it. You can either do it in macOS, or you can dual boot Linux. And for this tutorial, I'm just showing how to do the native in macOS way of doing it. And that will increase compatibility. It will allow for more games that weren't meant for macOS to run on macOS, but it will still be limited compatibility compared to like a dual boot scenario. And a dual boot scenario has the advantage over something like a virtual machine, like running Windows in VMware Fusion or whatever, as it doesn't have the overhead of that virtual machine. It's like running directly on the operating system. And Windows games tend to run better on Linux than Windows, anyways. So, yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to need is we're going to need these two programs. Heroic Games Launcher, which is the same program I use on Linux to launch all my non-Steam games. There are alternatives. There are many options. There's Bottles and Vegas Launcher and a whole bunch of others. But this is the one I like. It's got a nice interface. It's easy to use. It's easy to set up, and I haven't had any trouble with it. I've already downloaded that, so we don't need to download that here. And then we need this. And this is discontinued. It's no longer actively maintained, but the version of Wine it has is kind of special. There aren't as many options on macOS for Wine versions. And what Wine is Wine stands for Wine is not an emulator, which is not particularly helpful, but it's a compatibility layer that translates Windows function and API calls and stuff to native or close to native Linux stuff, so that the programs can run on Linux without having to use Windows or a virtual machine, and that goes for macOS too. There's a little bit more in macOS, but I've been out of touch with macOS so long I don't really know. Anyways, I've already got that downloaded, and then the last prerequisites we need to install Homebrew, which is a command line utility. We don't need this. We don't absolutely need this, but it will be helpful because there's a program built into Heroic called Wine Tricks, which allows you to install dependencies the game might need, like .NET or DirectX or stuff like that. And to get this running, to get Wine Tricks running, we need this. So you can download the package here, like the macOS PKG file, and just install it. But I'm just going to run this command because it's easier for me. Um, Here we go. Um, Xcode command line tool was installed. Press enter to return to report. The following directories will be created. Yes. Yeah, I didn't want to do this outside of the context of the tutorial because I would have had to then uninstall it. I did all the other work ahead of time, but like this, I'm going through this the first time here. I've installed Homebrew on my Linux PC, but I've never installed it on a Mac before. And it's similar. I just keyboard keyboard different. Um, and this is going to take a minute, so I'm going to pause OBS and we'll jump back into it when it's done. Okay, there, Brew's installed. I had to do a reboot, and then everything just works, or it should. So let's find out together. we need to install a couple of packages now that are required for Winetricks to work. Cab extract, Zenity, and 7-zip. Zenity renders the UI for Winetricks. It's terrible. Those of you familiar with Linux and like terminal-based package managers will be familiar with this kind of syntax, like apt-get DNF, RPMOS tree, Pacman. Pacman. I'm not a fan of Arch. And then, yeah, those of you who aren't, this is the command, this is the program, this is what we're telling it to do, and this is the package we're installing. So we're going to type brew install 7-zip, cab extract, and Zenity. And then it should just do the thing. And it did the thing. We got 7-zip. No available formula for 7-zip. Okay. To install, okay. Brew. See, the terminal isn't scary. It'll even correct you sometimes. Oh, yep, see, and I mistyped. There we go. And we're good. We should be good with the terminal commands now. Now we can start the easy stuff. So first, I downloaded Whiskey. I downloaded Heroic. First, we need to open Whiskey. And when Whiskey first starts up, it's going to say dependencies setup. Manage Whiskey's required dependencies. And this is what we need. Whiskey wine. And there's a reason we want this, even though the Heroic Games Launcher site mentions that it's no longer in development and says that, maybe don't. It's not recommended. This, yeah, I'm recommending it because the tests I have done show it to be better rounded for like general use for Steam games and stuff. Maybe not newest ones. You want to use Apple's porting kit for that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. And now we're done with that. We don't need Whiskey anymore. You can get rid of the app or you can keep it, but if you get rid of it and then somehow you accidentally delete Whiskey Wine, then you need it. So I would just keep it, put it somewhere safe. And then Heroic, first time it boots up, tells you all about the hot fixes, what's changed, all of that. And I don't want telemetry. And then we go over to settings. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go down here to where it says set folder for new wine prefixes. It says users, and then this is my friend's name, games, heroic, prefixes, default, and then your prefix is a prefix in wine. And I can't remember if in any of these takes I've explained what wine is. So yeah, wine is that compatibility layer that runs the Windows programs. Um, the default, like they should just go there. It just bothers me, so I'm just getting rid of that. Um, and then there's all these other settings, like if you want to exit Heroic to the system tray when the game launches, or you want to use all sorts of like add games to applications automatically, or your Mac Steam, so that they. But like if you're running Steam games on this, you're going to be running the Windows version of Steam, so it's kind of redundant. I wouldn't mess with that way. And these settings here, I'm going to pick Whiskey because we just set that up, and want to turn off eSync and MSync, or actually turn on advertise AVX for Rosetta, which is telling the x86 programs that it has this x86 feature in Rosetta, so that some newer games can run. And MSync works, so I'm just going to use MSync. These are different methods of reducing the wine server overhead for CPU intensive games, like it says right there. And different versions of wine work differently with it. Some don't work at all. But I know that whiskey wine works with these settings. So keep those settings. Wine Manager. These are the different versions of wine available on macOS. They're not as good as Proton or Proton GE or Wine GE, but they'll work for a lot of things. And this is Apple's. This is made for new games that run DirectX 11 or DirectX 12. Those will work fine, but older games won't work at all on them. I'm going to wait to install these. This one is Wine through Crossover. Crossover is a paid program. It's quite expensive, like crazy expensive, that does some of this. Or subscription. So, and this is an older version. Its main thing is it doesn't support DirectX 10 or 11 games. Um, it might support DirectX 10. And then this is wine staging. This is just straight wine, and it might work. It might not. You know, it doesn't have the proton patches or like the bits and bobs Apple's put into it or different things. So these are your options for runners, a program, a framework to execute the Windows programs in in macOS. They're not great options, but it's better than not being able to play the games at all. So, anyways, first step here, we can or in Heroic you can add your Epic Games account, GOG login, and all of that, and then that will populate in your library with the games that are available, and you can run them and try them out and do all of that. But I'm going to start with Steam because that's what a lot of people play games on, and that's the easiest to show here. So we just hit install Steam, and then we're going to wait, and it'll do all it needs to do and install Steam. And we'll be right back when that's done. Now Steam's installed, and now we can just hit the little green run button and it'll launch. And Steam takes a while to launch. So then I got to log in and everything. So then we'll test games once it's up and running and launched. One thing to note is when a program is starting to execute but hasn't displayed yet, um, has begun, it will say playing here. And you'll have this little orange X if you want to force stop it. Okay, we're up. Steam's up. I'm going to log in. It took, you got to be patient. This is an M1 MacBook Air. It took probably a minute to start. And unfortunately for Steam, it's kind of like that every time natively. It would be faster under Linux, but it is what it is. It should work. So I'm going to log in, um, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, Steam's up and running, and now all we do is we pick some games to install. I'm going to start with Stray because this game is amazing. It's just such a good game. And Purgatory because, you know, point and click adventures. Now, this is where choosing the version of wine was important. It stinks that whiskey wine is no longer being actively maintained. And Apple's porting kit is good for modern games. And graphically intense games. And Crossover's out of date version is good for some older games. But if you're using Steam and it's just this single prefix, and you need a balance, some of your games are kind of like indie retros, and some are. Whiskey covers both; they'll both work. Whereas this won't work in porting kit, and this won't work in the other one. Another thing you could do is you could install Steam a couple of times. There's no button to do that here, but what you could do is you could you could come over to where all the files for Steam are stored right here, which is in the user folder under games heroic prefixes and then Steam. Um, and you could duplicate that folder. And to see that in a real sense, we'll open a tab here, new tab, and then we'll go to my friends thing, games, heroic, prefixes. A prefix is the fake Windows environment that everything's stored in. It's the virtual C drive and the associated files for it to run. So this is Steam's. Now we could duplicate this, but it would take up twice the space, and then use a different version of Wine if we had it installed. So you could have a version of Steam that you used for your fancy modern games using a maintained version of Wine and a version of Steam that you use for your old games. And you would need to replicate this all the settings in here. So you would add a game and you get this pop up. You add what you want it to be named, and you could name it differently here. And then once that's all set up, you would replicate all of these settings, make sure they're all the same, so that it would operate as intended. Like here, there's no bootstrap update and a bunch of other things. But yeah, that's basically it for Steam. And then I guess when these are done downloading, I'll just show you that they run. Okay, I installed 4 games. I installed Stray, Purgatory, and Grow Home, and Portal 2, just to cover all my bases. This one's a text adventure. This is kind of speed you can expect on the M1. Obviously, this is a text adventure, so it's going to come up a little bit. Now you can hear that the sound is pretty rough here, but that's not actually how the sound is normally. It's an issue with OBS. I don't know what's happening here, but it's a problem with OBS. And then we got Stray, which, takes a little bit. A little bit. It's got to install some prerequisites there. You can see them down in the corner there. I'll jump back into it when it launches. There we go. It was only a couple seconds. They'll all launch quicker the second time they've run, because the first time they install, they've still got to install DirectX or .NET or some other Windows element. And these all work with a controller. It's so you're not locked to keyboard. They will work. In a second, any second now, unless I have to quit it and repair it, because it's possible this was turned off, that I might have to quit the game and repair it. But yeah, you can see the sound is pretty bad with OBS, but that's not actually an indicator of how it runs. And one thing is, these games, they're running through a couple of translation layers. The first through Wine. Wine is not an emulator. The Windows compatibility layer, for translating the APIs and API and function calls to native system calls, and then also Rosetta, which translates x86 to ARM. And so when you first launch, it can be a little bit stuttery. But this is Stray at 1440 by 900 resolution on on a MacBook Air, on an ARM MacBook Air. And let's mess with this guy's Mahjong game. Yeah, ready? Yeah, right there. Oh, they're so upset with me. Oh, yeah. I'm a cat. Yeah, it runs well. And yeah, I don't really need to show anymore, but why not? You know, Everyone, oops, that's my collections. I want downloads. Everyone loved Portal, so some Portal. Again, the sound issues are something with OBS recording. I don't know what it is, but it runs. Got a controller. Yeah, sometimes it crashed out. I don't know why it did that, but it should have kept running. See, these are the kinds of things you can expect to happen because Wine on macOS isn't perfect. There are issues with it, but the last time I did play it on here and it played well, so I'm not gonna like poo-poo it. Like it might just need a settings change of some kind. It's possible that I have MSync turned on, and it's possible that some of the games might not play well with it. It just slightly improves some performance. So if I turn that off, it may have fixed it. I'm not gonna shut everything down just to test that right now, though. And we got our first one that doesn't work right. Uh, Grow Home froze solid, and also its performance were right. So, like I said, I mean, obviously Portal crashed, so it didn't work right either, actually, but it has worked right in the past. So your mileage will definitely vary. And that's a thing to consider. And if you really want a game on your Mac, and you don't mind testing out different games, you just install them and run them. And if they run, they run. And if they don't, they don't. Compatibility will be here or there, but it should work. But this is a way to do it without having to deal with like adding anything other than just like software to your Mac OS. But if you really want a game on your Mac and you want good compatibility, it's going to be dual booting Asahi Linux. And that's a separate video. I'm not doing that here. So yeah, that's Windows Steam running on Mac OS. You can see some things work, some things don't, but generally, you have the ability to at least play some Windows games. Now, you can, like I said, you can sign into your different stores here and try out those games. Or you can just add a game. And when you go to add a game, I've got a game ready to test. My friend's game. They wanted to run it. They've got it here, the Mac version, but it doesn't work with controller for some reason. So I downloaded the same game from their GOG, and this is the Windows version. So you just put in the name, and it finds a cover for you. You pick the platform it's on because you can use this to manage Mac games or browser games too. These are the wine settings. Default wine will use the wine that's in this prefix, like in default. Or if you change the name here to something else, like it could be Miss Windows Games, it'll use that. And that puts all of the games in the same prefix, which is considered bad practice because sometimes a game can have compatibility differences. Like it needs dependencies that will break the other game, like using the native wine mono instead of .NET or something might work with one game and not another. But in my experience, I run a monolithic prefix for most of my games, and it works pretty okay. It generally works okay for most games. Some games need their own prefixes, and that's what that's for. But on Mac, because the compatibility and the issues with Wine are all over the place, I'm not going to use a monolithic prefix. The benefit of doing it that way is each prefix takes up like 400 to 600 megabytes minimum. So if you've got like 40 games on there, that's 500 times 40. You're talking like 20 gigabytes about. So, but yeah, you just put in the name. You can leave the wine settings default. It will make a prefix for it. I don't know why it's calling it side load there. It should be calling it Binding of Isaac. Usually they're named for the game each, and then you pick the wine version. I've only got whiskey installed, but I don't want to use that because I want to demonstrate the other wine things. So game porting toolkit, not going to use that, not going to work. This one's good for old games. That will work. This one is, it's whatever. So I'm just going to add those now that I have the chance to. And we're going to plop this back here. And I'm going to remember that Macs use the command key. And not the control key. And then we're going to wait for those to install. I'm just going to install it and change it later. Anyways, you hit Run Installer first, and then you select your installer, and it builds the prefix, so that takes a couple of seconds. That takes a bit. And then once it does that, it'll show up as a regular Windows app. And there we go. We have an installer for the GOG game right up here. You click OK. It comes up. You've read that thing. Anyways, default installation is going to be C wherever, and that's going to be inside your wine prefixes, which means that if the game is installed to its own prefix, the Binding of Isaac Rebirth, is going to be inside this folder that says drive C. And this is like the root of the virtual C drive. And then it'll be here. But if you want to install it in a directory and like regular system, like in your user folder or like games, or I wouldn't install it in applications because you're not going to launch it that way. But like if you want to install it somewhere easily accessible from macOS without diving into all these prefix folders into the virtual C drives, you can install it. Like most of all my games on Linux, I don't install them in the virtual C drives. I install them to the same folder as a prefix. I have prefix here, and then all of the games are just installed next to the prefixes. And the way you do that is you select this, and Z in wine is your the root of your host operating system's drive. So you can see this is Mac OS with all of its hidden folders and everything too. So that would be users, holiday, because that's friend's name, and then games, heroic, and then I could put them right next to the prefix here. This is kind of like how gamers on Windows would just like take the folder that their game was installed in and move it to another system instead of reinstalling it. You can do that with this and then make a new prefix, or you can copy the entire prefix to another system. I'm just going to install it in the default location for now, because there's no reason not to. Okay, the installer is run, and then I exited it. I forgot to show that part, but now it doesn't automatically find the program file like in a start menu and add it. You have to click select executable here, and it takes you to the prefix the game is installed in. You just go to where it's installed and select the program. I'm going to do, oh, I don't know which one of these is which. See, this is one small problem with side loading games, Windows games. But I'm just going to hit the launcher one. Usually it's pretty clear. Usually you don't have a bunch of EXEs. You just have the one game launcher file. So now let's start it. We're using Whiskey. We've got MSync enabled and all of that because that's default. We'll see if it runs. If it doesn't, we just switch the wine. And you can switch which wine it uses by default too. down here in the settings, so you can change the default wine. I used whiskey to install Steam, but I would probably stick to a different one a lot of the time. Yeah, there you go. Side-loaded game. Again, terrible audio. Also controller support. So it's working. So that's how you do that. That's how you install a Windows game in Heroic, and then you just have it in Heroic, and your games go to that folder I showed you previously. And other than that, like if you've got a GOG or an Epic account, a lot of Epic games have kernel anti-cheat, so they're not going to work on Linux or Mac OS, regardless. But you sign into these, and then they just populate here as grayed out games, and you just click the button to install them. It's like a one-step click. There are maybe a couple options you have. Here, let me see. This is my desktop PC. This is my Linux PC. I open Heroic here, and it's going to come up with all my games grayed out because I just cleared out a bunch of memory. But if I go to here and I show only GOG games, these are my games from my GOG account. All I have to do to install these is click them. I don't have all of them installed. Let's see. You can go filter and show non-available games, turn that off, and show installed games only. There. So my uninstalled games, they show up like this, and all I have to do to install them is click the button. Um, let's an example here. Like that. It asks me where I want to install it. If I want to change that, I can change it. It uses default wine settings. And on here, because it's my PC, I have Proton, so I don't have to. And I hit install, and then it does it automatically. So that's it. That would be the same process on Mac, except you wouldn't have Proton, so the compatibility is going to be lower. If you do the next steps, if you really want a game on a Mac and you want a dual boot and you use Oz, a He Linux, then it would be the same steps. Anyways, this video's taken me longer to do than I wanted, and I think I did okay. There you go.
Well, hello everybody, Future May from the Editing Bay. Not that this video needed a whole lot of edits, but there were some things, like this list here of things I forgot to cover, like explaining what a prefix is. Got that. Showing how to change wine settings after installing a game. Gonna show that. Boop, boop. So these are my GOG games that aren't installed. I'm just going to download and install one. You hit install, it starts downloading and installing. I'm not going to have y'all wait for that. I'm going to pause. Well, that was fast. Literally seconds. Okay, so I can click this, play the game. Prefixes all set up. Here's where I would change it. Under wine version, I just hit the different wine version. I have quite a few versions of Proton installed. Anyways, that's it for that. So next step, what do we got? I forgot to show how to use wine tricks or show anything about configuring wine. Two birds, one stone. Let's get over here and do that. Okay, so some games, they might need certain dependencies like frameworks or runtimes that you need to install for the game to run. So this is what we did all of that at the beginning of the video for. That was so that we could run wine tricks. It's setting it up, and it'll show up here in a minute. I've never done it on this prefix. There it is. Open, and then takes a minute. La da 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 la up 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 up, and there it is. It's ugly, but in here you can install applications, benchmarks, Create a new wine prefix. You're not going to do that from heroic. Select default wine prefix is what you want there. And then there's all these options to do different things, including run the registry editor, task manager, explorer, uninstaller, wine command window. And you can just change tons of settings for how wine works, or um, install DLLs or components that are necessary for the game to run. And so that's how that works. Some of the stuff you don't need to do because it's baked in, like the wine config to do basic configuration of wine is already in there. It's taking a while to load. Proton 10. Oh no, I'm coughing. Proton 10 for some reason doesn't decorate the windows on my computer. But yeah, all sorts of like Windowsy settings for like integrating into the desktop and stuff. And then if you install the game and then you have like DLC or something, you want to install it in the same prefix, you would like run exe on prefix, and then you could do that there. You can also like change the prefix location, or like if you click on the app and you hit here, you can change where the app is located. But yeah, that's basically the rest of it. Okay, back to the video now.
Thanks for watching. I'll see you all later. That gum you like is coming back in style.